In a prior video, we asked what would happen if, on your turn, you control a Kaito Bane of Nightmares, who is now a 3/4 hexproof creature, and cast a Spark Double, choosing to have it enter as Kaito. How does the Spark Double enter the battlefield, and with what counters? You all had tons of great opinions, feedback. I love to read the back and forth. But what is the answer? Well, let's go ahead and dive in and talk about this interaction as I've come to understand this. To understand this interaction fully, we first kind of need to understand both Planeswalkers and what it means to copy something. So for Planeswalkers, we turn to Rule 306.5b. A Planeswalker has the intrinsic ability, quote, "This permanent enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters on it equal to its printed loyalty number." And this ability creates a replacement effect. And then it refers, of course, to Rule 614.1c. Now, looking at Rule 614.1c, this states that effects that read, quote, "This permanent enters the battlefield with," as this permanent enters the battlefield, or this permanent enters the battlefield as, are replacement effects. Now, some of you may be asking a very important question: what are replacement effects? Replacement effects are effects that apply continuously as things happen. Typically, we see these on cards like Jinny Fae, and we often see the words "instead." So typically these read as, if you would do this thing, you do this thing instead, replacing the first event with a second one entirely. But as we're seeing with Planeswalkers, and multiple other things, this verbiage isn't always used for replacement effects. Sometimes the replacement effects are simply implied, or sort of intrinsic to the card. So, fun fact, sagas also use replacement effects as they enter with counters. And so do Planeswalkers. So in this case, Planeswalkers have the replacement effect that modifies how they enter, allowing counters to be placed as they enter. So please keep that in mind. Now let's move forward to copy effects. For copy effects, we'll refer to 707.2 that says, when copying an object, that copy acquires the copyable values of the original object's characteristics. The copyable values are the values derived from the text printed on the object. That text being name, mana cost, color indicator, card type, subtype, supertype, rules text, power, toughness, and or loyalty. So effectively, if you're copying a permanent, you're copying everything that is printed on that card. But wait, doesn't Spark Double say that it enters as something? Where have we seen that before? Oh yeah, this is also a replacement effect. Spark Double is a replacement effect. Okay, so now we're dealing with Spark Double entering as something, and then if it does happen to copy Kaito, Kaito would enter with, so we're dealing with two replacement effects. So in what order do we apply these in? Typically, we think of replacement effects as being applied in the order that the player controlling the permanents affected chooses. So if I have Kami of Whispered Hopes and Doubling Season on the battlefield and I cast a Snakeskin Veil on Grizzly Bears, both Kami and Doubling Season have replacement effects, and we control the objects through which these are trying to apply to. So we could, in theory, put a 1/1 counter on our bears with the Snakeskin Veil, which would be replaced by Doubling Season, meaning 2 1/1 counters, and then have that replaced by Kami, which would make it 2 1/1 counters plus 1. Or we could apply the Kami first. So we would Snakeskin Veil for 1 counter, Kami does 1 plus 1, and then double those, which puts us at 4. And that's why this is sort of relevant. Now that is how replacement effects would typically apply in your average game of Magic. However, there is a really unique case here with the Spark Double and copy effects, and that there is an order through which some replacement effects have to be replaced. So let's take a look at that. For that, we're going to refer to Rule 616.1. So if 2 or more replacement and or prevention effects are attempting to modify the way an event affects an object or player, the affected object's controller, or its owner if it has no controller, or the affected player chooses one to apply, following the steps listed below. If 2 or more players have to make these choices at the same time, choices are made in AppNap order, which is active player, not active player. So in this case, there is a sort of order. 616.1a says, if any of the replacement and or prevention effects are self-replacement effects, one of them must be chosen. If not, move on. 616.1b says if any of the replacement and or prevention effects would modify under whose control an object would enter the battlefield, one of them must be chosen. If not, move on. It's important to know that 616.1a and 616.1b do not apply in this situation, so we've moved on to 616.1c. If any of the replacement and or prevention effects would cause an object to become a copy of another object as it enters the battlefield, one of them must be chosen. If not, proceed to 616.1d. And then 616.1d says any of the replacement effects and or prevention effects may be chosen. Now moving on to 616.1e, once the chosen effects have been applied, this process repeats until there are no more replacement effects left. So effectively what this is saying is here are 3 replacement effects that have to be hit in this order if they're applicable. Then you can do the other replacement effects. And typically this doesn't, again, come up that often, but there are sort of layers to replacement effects. In this case, Spark Double's replacement effect hits first. So in this case, I believe that Spark Double that we've chosen to enter as Kaito becomes a copy of Kaito, Bane of Nightmares, the Planeswalker, entering with the additional 1 loyalty counter. And then the second replacement effect of entering with 4 loyalty from being Kaito will apply. So we will get a Kaito with 5 loyalty. But wait, doesn't 614.12 say that some replacement effects that modify how a permanent enters look ahead to see how the permanent would exist on the battlefield, taking into account continuous effects from its own abilities, other replacement effects that affect how it enters, and things like that? Kind of, but let's... Okay. 614.12 says some replacement effects modify how a permanent enters the battlefield. Such effects may come from the permanent itself if they affect only that permanent. They may also come from other sources. To determine which replacement effects apply and how they apply, check the characteristics of the permanent as it would exist on the battlefield, taking into account replacement effects that have already modified how it enters the battlefield, continuous effect from that permanent's own static abilities, and continuous effects that already exist and would apply to the permanent, which is a lot, right? So for a lot of people, this is where things get murky and they go, okay, Spark Double would enter as Kaito, but it would see itself as Kaito the creature, not Kaito the Planeswalker, so it enter as a Planeswalker creature, right? Well, that's not exactly how this would work in this particular case, according to some of the judges I've talked to and some of the things I've looked into. As I've come to understand it, we have to keep in mind that Spark Double's replacement effect applies first, according to 616.c, and then any other replacement effects and abilities would apply. At the time that Spark Double's replacement effect is attempting to apply, it does look ahead. It doesn't yet have loyalty counters though, and so the continuous effect from Kaito to become a creature has not been met. So Spark Double enters as a Planeswalker with the loyalty counters and then becomes a creature. Now, it's worth noting that on your turn, Kaito is a creature, but the text on Kaito doesn't say in addition to its other types, meaning that he's not technically a Planeswalker, though you could still use the loyalty abilities. And I think that's what has tripped people up. I know that was kind of confusing to me as well. This stands in pretty stark contrast to like Gideon Blackblade, who is both a creature and a Planeswalker, which allows Spark Double to sort of be a little bit goofy here. Now for our bonus question, Irenicus' Vile Duplication, this is actually pretty simple, relatively. Because Kaito is a creature, Irenicus' Vile Duplication can target Kaito. And so because Irenicus copies all copyable traits, all the things we've talked about, it just makes a copy of Kaito, which is a Planeswalker. It applies the Planeswalker replacement effect of entering with loyalty, but it also comes in with the flying counter because of Vile Duplication. So, because it has loyalty, it's a creature. Ba-dum. Bob's your uncle. Now, again, this is how I've come to understand this interaction after, talking to a lot of people about it, after doing research. And I got personally tripped up with the double replacement effects. Does the Spark Double enter with just a single loyalty because it's replaced the Planeswalker replacement? I tripped myself up a little bit with that stuff, but that's part of it. That's fun. Now, big shout out to Joe and Sean, a little screenshot up here in the video. Wholesome interactions all around. I really appreciated seeing the open-minded discussions and the education and the back and forth. That is the exact environment we'd like to foster here. The whole point is to ask questions and to be curious and to understand that we don't know everything. I don't know everything. And to foster an environment where we can all learn without feeling bad about it. Because we don't want to be rules lawyers. We don't want to police the game. We want to be able to expand our knowledge of the game without, like, I don't know, being the worst. So did we mess anything up? Do you have questions? Do you have suggestions? Leave them below. And of course, we'll see you guys in the next video.